The spotlight bathed Marcus Caldwell in its warm glow as he stood center stage at the Pacific Tech Summit, his perfectly tailored navy suit commanding attention from the packed auditorium. Behind him, a massive screen displayed the sleek logo of Quantum Dynamics, the artificial intelligence startup that had become Silicon Valley's latest darling. His voice carried that practiced confidence of someone who had told this story 100 times before. "I built this company from nothing," Marcus declared, his hands gesturing expansively toward the presentation. 3 years ago, I had a vision. I saw the future of machine learning, and I knew I could make it reality." The audience hung on every word, smartphones recording, journalists scribbling notes. Marcus clicked his remote, revealing stunning growth charts and user engagement metrics that made several venture capitalists lean forward in their seats. Diana Caldwell watched from the wings, her black cocktail dress feeling increasingly out of place among the casual hoodies and designer jeans that dominated the tech world. She had been relegated to the spouse section, where wives and partners waited patiently for the networking dinner to begin. Whether you're watching from New York, California, or anywhere else around the globe, you understand what it means to see innovation transform industries, Marcus continued, his practiced smile never wavering. Please comment below and let us know where you're tuning in from, because this technology revolution affects every corner of our connected world. Diana's manicured fingers drummed silently against her clutch as she listened to her husband of 8 years take credit for algorithms she had spent countless nights perfecting. The irony wasn't lost on her that while Marcus spoke about artificial intelligence, he possessed remarkably little intelligence about the actual technology powering his success. During the question and answer session, a prominent investor from Benchmark Capital raised her hand. "Can you walk us through the core architecture of your neural network design?" she asked. "The technical implementation seems remarkably sophisticated for such a young company." Marcus's pause lasted just a beat too long before he launched into a well-rehearsed response about cloud computing and data processing that managed to say absolutely nothing of substance. Diana noticed how he avoided specific technical terminology, dancing around the actual innovations that made quantum dynamics special. She caught the subtle eye roll from Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the chief technology officer at Tesla, who sat in the front row. The networking reception that followed felt like a carefully choreographed performance where Diana played the role of the supportive wife. She smiled appropriately, nodded at the right moments, and allowed herself to be introduced simply as Marcus's better half. Tech executives and venture capitalists treated her with the polite disinterest reserved for family members who didn't understand the serious business of disrupting industries. Bradley Chun from Andreessen Horowitz cornered Marcus near the bar, his voice dropping to that conspiratorial tone that venture capitalists used when discussing 8-figure investments. "I have to admit, Marcus, when we first heard your pitch 2 years ago, we were skeptical about the technical feasibility. Your wife seemed to understand the architecture better than most CTOs we've met." Marcus laughed, the sound carrying just enough nervousness to make Diana's stomach tighten. "Diana has always been good at picking up bits and pieces," he said, his arm sliding possessively around her waist. "But you know how it is with spouses. They hear you talk about work enough, they start using the buzzwords." Diana's smile remained perfectly pleasant even as something cold and sharp twisted in her chest. She had spent 4 years at MIT earning her PhD in computer science, followed by 2 years at Google's DeepMind division before Marcus had convinced her that building something together would be more fulfilling than climbing someone else's corporate ladder. Victor Rosenberg, the legendary founder of 3 successful startups, joined their circle with a crystal tumbler of aged whiskey. "Marcus," he said, raising his glass in salute, "I've been in this business for 20 years, and I can count on one hand the number of founders who truly understand both the technical and business sides of their companies. You're building something special." Diana excused herself to the ladies' room, needing a moment away from the suffocating praise being heaped on her husband for work that had consumed 2 years of her life. In the mirror, she studied her reflection, seeing the woman she had become rather than the brilliant engineer she had been. Her phone buzzed with a text message from someone labeled only as JS. "Everything ready for Tuesday's board meeting. Documentation complete." She deleted the message and returned to the reception, where Marcus was now holding court with a larger group of potential investors. They were discussing the upcoming Series C funding round, a $50 million investment that would catapult quantum dynamics into the top tier of AI startups. The technical challenges we've overcome, Marcus was saying, would have been impossible without the right vision from day one. Too many founders get bogged down in the engineering details instead of focusing on the big picture strategy. Diana felt her phone buzz again. Another message, this time from her former colleague at Google. Saw Marcus's presentation online. Interesting how similar the architecture looks to your original research proposal from 2019. She slipped the phone back into her clutch and rejoined the conversation, where Marcus was now explaining how he planned to use the new funding to expand their engineering team. We need people who can execute on the vision, he said confidently. The foundation is solid, but scaling requires a different kind of thinking. Diana here keeps suggesting we hire more PhD types, but sometimes you need practical experience over theoretical knowledge. Several of the investors nodded appreciatively, clearly impressed by what they perceived as Marcus's pragmatic leadership style. Diana's smile never wavered, but she filed away every word, every casual dismissal, every moment where her husband diminished her contributions in front of the people who controlled their company's future. The evening wound down with handshakes and business card exchanges, promises of follow-up meetings and due diligence calls. As they waited for their Uber, Marcus scrolled through his phone, already composing social media posts about the successful presentation. Did you see how Victor Rosenberg was hanging on every word? He said, his excitement palpable in the cool evening air. This is it, Diana. This is our moment to really make it big. Diana nodded, her mind already turning to Tuesday's board meeting and the presentation she knew Marcus would give about the company's technical roadmap. A roadmap he had never actually seen, built on innovations he had never truly understood, funded by investors who believed they were backing his vision rather than her algorithms. The city lights blurred past the car window as they drove home to their Palo Alto house, and Diana found herself wondering how much longer she could maintain the fiction that had somehow become her reality. 3 days later, their Palo Alto dining room had been transformed into an impromptu boardroom, complete with Marcus's laptop connected to their wall-mounted television displaying Quantum Dynamics' latest performance metrics. Diana arranged the catered sushi and premium sake, while Marcus adjusted his casual Friday outfit for the third time, clearly nervous about hosting Katerina Volkov and James Morrison, two heavyweight investors from different coasts who had flown in specifically to discuss the Series C funding. Katerina arrived first, her silver Tesla Model S purring quietly into their driveway. The founder of Volkov Ventures carried herself with the confident precision of someone who had personally overseen investments totaling over $2 billion. Her handshake with Marcus was firm but brief, her attention quickly shifting to the technical documentation spread across the coffee table. James Morrison pulled up moments later in an understated black sedan, his reputation as the most analytically rigorous partner at East Coast Capital preceding him. Unlike many venture capitalists who relied heavily on market trends and founder charisma, Morrison was known for diving deep into technical architecture before committing serious money. Diana served the appetizers while Marcus launched into his practiced pitch about market opportunity and competitive advantages. She moved quietly between the kitchen and dining room, refilling glasses and ensuring everyone had what they needed, effectively invisible to the conversation happening at her own table. The numbers look impressive, Katerina said, scrolling through the user growth charts on her iPad. But I want to understand the underlying technology better. Can you walk me through your approach to transformer architecture optimization? Marcus straightened in his chair, his confidence from the tech summit slightly less evident in this intimate setting. We use a proprietary approach to neural network scaling, he began, gesturing toward the screen. The key is balancing computational efficiency with model accuracy. Morrison leaned forward, his pen poised over his legal pad. Specifically, how are you handling attention mechanism bottlenecks when processing sequences longer than standard context windows? Diana paused in the doorway between the kitchen and dining room, a fresh bottle of sake in her hands, watching her husband's face go momentarily blank. She had spent 6 months solving exactly that problem, developing a novel approach to segmented attention that had become one of quantum dynamics' core innovations. We implement a multi-layered approach, Marcus said finally, his voice carrying just enough uncertainty to make both investors exchange a quick glance. The technical team handles the implementation details, but the strategic vision focuses on scalability across different use cases. Diana stepped forward, setting the sake on the table with practiced grace. If I may, she said softly, the segmented attention approach divides longer sequences into overlapping windows with cross-segment memory retention, allowing for linear scaling rather than quadratic complexity growth. Both investors turned toward her with sudden interest, their expressions shifting from polite acknowledgement to genuine attention. Morrison's pen stopped moving as he processed what she had just explained in 30 seconds what Marcus had failed to articulate in 5 minutes. That's fascinating, Katerina said, her Russian accent adding weight to her words. Have you published any research on this approach? Diana glanced at Marcus, whose jaw had tightened almost imperceptibly. She's always been good at picking up technical concepts, he said with a forced laugh. But the real innovation comes from understanding market applications rather than just the theoretical framework. Morrison wasn't easily redirected. The implementation you just described would require significant expertise in transformer architectures. Are you involved in the technical development process? Before Diana could respond, Marcus's hand found her shoulder in what appeared to be an affectionate gesture, but felt more like a warning. Diana helps with documentation and organization, but the core engineering decisions require someone focused full-time on the technical challenges. We're actually looking to bring in a new chief technology officer to help scale the team. The statement hit Diana like a physical blow, though her expression remained perfectly composed. She excused herself to check on the main course, her hands steady as she arranged the sashimi platters in the kitchen while processing what Marcus had just announced to two of Silicon Valley's most influential investors. When she returned, the conversation had shifted to competitive analysis and market positioning. Marcus was in his element discussing customer acquisition costs and revenue projections, topics where his MBA training served him well. But Diana noticed how both investors kept stealing glances at her, their earlier interaction clearly still on their minds. The evening progressed through multiple courses, with Marcus growing more animated as the sake flowed. He regaled his guests with stories about the company's early days, carefully editing out Diana's contributions while emphasizing his own vision and leadership. During dessert, Morrison brought up technical scalability again. As we approached the due diligence phase, he said, we'll need comprehensive documentation of your technical architecture. Our engineering team will want to review the codebase and system design decisions. Diana watched Marcus's confidence falter slightly, knowing he had never personally reviewed the actual code that powered their platform. Of course, he said, we have extensive documentation. Diana actually helps maintain our technical records. That's unusual, Katerina observed, setting down her chopsticks. Most founders prefer to keep technical documentation within the engineering team. Marcus's laugh sounded forced. Diana has a background in computer science, so she understands enough to help with organization. But obviously the strategic technical decisions are made by the engineering leadership. Diana felt her phone buzz in her pocket. The message, again from the contact labeled JS, was brief but significant. Legal review complete. All documentation verified and submitted. The dinner wound down with promises of follow-up meetings and formal term sheets. As Diana walked the investors to their cars, Morrison lingered on the front steps. Your explanation of the attention mechanism was remarkably sophisticated, he said quietly. Have you considered a more active role in the company's technical leadership? Before Diana could respond, Marcus appeared behind them, his arms sliding around her waist with possessive familiarity. Diana prefers the support role, he said firmly. The pressure of technical leadership isn't really her style. Morrison's expression suggested he found that explanation less than convincing, but he simply nodded and shook hands before driving away into the Silicon Valley evening. After the investors left, Diana cleaned up while Marcus paced the living room, replaying every moment of the dinner conversation. They seemed interested, he said, though his voice carried an edge of uncertainty that hadn't been there during his tech summit presentation. Diana rinsed wine glasses in the kitchen sink, her mind churning through the implications of Marcus's announcement about hiring a new CTO. The position he was describing, the role he was planning to fill with someone else, was essentially her job. Every algorithm, every architectural decision, every technical innovation that made quantum dynamics valuable had originated from her research and development. Her phone buzzed again. This time the message was from Dr. Sarah Kim, her former advisor at MIT. Saw the news about quantum dynamics funding round. Impressive work. Hope you're getting the recognition you deserve. Diana deleted the message and finished cleaning up, wondering how much longer she could maintain her silence while watching Marcus auction off her life's work to the highest bidder. The board meeting on Tuesday would bring everything into focus, she knew. The question was whether she was finally ready to stop playing the supportive wife and start reclaiming her rightful place as the technical founder of quantum dynamics. As Marcus continued celebrating what he clearly considered a successful evening, Diana retreated to her home office and opened her laptop. The screen displayed lines of code that represented 2 years of innovation, algorithms that would soon be worth $50 million to investors who believed they were funding Marcus's vision rather than her brilliance. She opened a new document and began typing, her fingers moving across the keyboard with the precision of someone who had finally decided to stop hiding in plain sight. Tuesday morning arrived with the kind of crisp October clarity that made Silicon Valley feel like the center of the universe. Diana had chosen her outfit carefully, a charcoal gray blazer with matching slacks that struck the perfect balance between professional and non-threatening. She wanted to blend into the background of the quantum dynamics boardroom, at least initially. The conference room on the 15th floor overlooked the South Bay, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the tech campuses that had made this stretch of California the most valuable real estate in the world. Marcus had arrived early, his presentation materials perfectly organized, his confidence restored after a weekend of preparation. The board members filed in with the punctuality that venture capitalists wore like armor. Katerina Volkov took her usual seat at the far end of the table, her tablet already displaying detailed financial projections. James Morrison sat across from her, his legal pad filled with questions he had prepared after reviewing the technical documentation Diana had quietly submitted through their law firm. Robert Chun, their existing board member from the Series A round, brought his characteristic intensity to the room. As the founder of 3 successful exits, his presence alone validated quantum dynamics potential. Dr. Amanda Foster from Stanford's computer science department served as their technical advisor, her reputation lending academic credibility to their artificial intelligence claims. Diana took the seat closest to the door, her notebook open but mostly empty, playing the role of the dutiful spouse who was there to observe rather than participate. Marcus began with his standard presentation about market opportunity and competitive positioning, slides she had helped him prepare but would receive no credit for creating. The financial projections look strong, Robert said, scrolling through the revenue forecasts on his device. But before we discuss the Series C terms, I want to dive deeper into the technical roadmap. Our due diligence team has raised some interesting questions. Marcus clicked to his technical overview slide, a high-level diagram that managed to convey complexity without revealing any actual innovation. As you can see, he said, our approach to machine learning optimization creates significant advantages in both processing speed and accuracy. Dr. Foster leaned forward, her academic credentials giving weight to every question. The architecture diagram shows a novel approach to attention mechanisms, but I'm curious about the mathematical foundations. Can you walk us through the gradient optimization techniques you're using? Diana watched Marcus's confident expression flicker for just a moment before he launched into a response about computational efficiency and scalability that avoided answering the specific question. She had developed those mathematical foundations over 18 months of research, building on her doctoral work in neural network optimization. Morrison opened a manila folder and withdrew a stack of documents. This brings up an interesting discrepancy, he said, his voice carrying the careful neutrality of someone who had discovered something significant. Our legal team found some inconsistencies in the intellectual property filings. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees as Marcus straightened in his chair. What kind of inconsistencies? He asked, though his voice carried a note of forced casualness. Morrison slid a document across the table. The original patent applications for your core algorithms were filed under different names. Dr. Diana Caldwell is listed as the primary inventor on 7 of the 9 foundational patents. Diana felt every pair of eyes in the room shift toward her, but she maintained her composure, simply looking up from her notebook with what she hoped appeared to be mild surprise. The silence stretched for several seconds before Marcus cleared his throat. Diana helped with some of the early research, he said, his smile looking increasingly strained. But the strategic vision and commercial applications were my contribution. Patent filings often list multiple contributors for legal protection. Katerina's accent made her next question sound even more pointed. According to these documents, Dr. Caldwell was listed as the corresponding author on the research papers that form the theoretical basis for your technology. That's typically reserved for the lead researcher. Diana had written those papers during late nights in their home office, while Marcus focused on business development and investor relations. She had submitted them to peer-reviewed journals under both their names, though she had done 90% of the actual research and writing. Morrison turned to another page in his folder. There's also the matter of the initial pitch deck from 2019. The technical specifications were remarkably sophisticated for such an early-stage presentation. He slid another document across the table, and Diana recognized her own handwriting in the margins of the original business plan. She had spent weeks perfecting those technical specifications, drawing on her experience at Google's DeepMind division to create a roadmap that would be both ambitious and achievable. Marcus reached for the document, but Morrison's hand was faster. "Dr. Caldwell," he said, addressing Diana directly for the first time since the meeting began. "Do you remember contributing to these technical specifications?" The room went completely silent. Diana could feel Marcus's tension radiating from the other end of the table, his carefully constructed narrative beginning to crack under the weight of documented evidence. She met Morrison's gaze steadily, her voice calm and measured when she finally spoke. "I provided some technical input during the early planning stages," she said. "My background in machine learning helped inform the feasibility assessments." "Some technical input," Robert repeated, his tone suggesting he found that description inadequate. "According to these documents, you designed the entire neural network architecture and wrote the algorithms that power the platform." Marcus stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "I think there's some confusion here," he said, his voice carrying an edge of desperation he was trying to disguise as authority. "Diana has always been supportive of the company, but the core innovations and leadership decisions have been mine." Dr. Foster opened her own folder, revealing academic papers that Diana recognized as her own published research. "I've been reviewing Dr. Caldwell's academic work," she said. Her publications in the Journal of Machine Learning Research from 2018 and 2019 describe the exact methodologies that quantum dynamics has implemented. Diana felt a flutter of something between pride and vindication as the board members absorbed this information. She had published that research before quantum dynamics existed, establishing a clear timeline of innovation that Marcus couldn't dismiss or claim credit for. Katerina turned her tablet toward the table, displaying what appeared to be email correspondence. "Our technical team also found some interesting communications in the company's archived emails. Dr. Caldwell appears to have been corresponding directly with your engineering team about implementation details. Those emails revealed the truth that Marcus had been trying to hide for 2 years. Diana had been the technical leader of quantum dynamics in everything but title, making every major architectural decision while her husband took credit during board presentations and investor meetings." Marcus's face had gone pale, his confidence completely evaporated. "Listen," he said, his voice taking on a pleading quality that Diana had never heard before. "Diana has been incredibly helpful, but running a technology company requires more than just technical knowledge. It requires leadership, vision, business acumen." Morrison's expression suggested he was rapidly losing patience with Marcus's explanations. "Mr. Caldwell," he said formally, "are you suggesting that Dr. Caldwell lacks the business acumen to understand her own innovations?" Before Marcus could respond, Diana spoke again, her voice carrying a quiet authority that commanded attention. "I think there may be some misunderstanding about my role in the company's development," she said. "I'm happy to clarify any technical questions the board might have." The power dynamics in the room shifted perceptibly as Diana demonstrated knowledge that Marcus clearly didn't possess. Robertson pulled out his phone and began scrolling through what appeared to be additional documentation. Actually, he said, his voice carrying a note of discovery that made Marcus visibly flinch. I'm looking at our original investment documents from 2020. The technical due diligence reports specifically mentioned Dr. Caldwell's expertise as a key factor in our decision to fund the company. Diana remembered those early investor meetings, where she had fielded the technical questions while Marcus handled the business projections. She had assumed the investors understood that they were funding a partnership, but it was becoming clear that Marcus had systematically minimized her contributions in subsequent communications. Morrison closed his folder and leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. I think we need to take a step back here, he said. Before we discuss Series C funding, we need to clarify the actual leadership structure and intellectual property ownership. Marcus made one final attempt to regain control of the situation. I propose we table this discussion and continue with the funding presentation, he said. These technical details can be resolved through our legal teams. But Katerina was already shaking her head. Actually, she said, her accent making the words sound final, I think we need to understand exactly who we're investing in before we proceed any further. Diana felt her phone buzz with another message from the mysterious JS contact. Board documentation package delivered. Everything is ready. She deleted the message and looked up to find 5 pairs of eyes focused on her with an intensity that Marcus had never commanded. For the first time in 2 years, she was being seen as something more than the supportive spouse who arranged catering and took notes. The meeting was far from over, but the foundation of Marcus's carefully constructed fiction was beginning to crumble, one document and one question at a time. Morrison reached into his briefcase and withdrew a thick folder that he placed deliberately in the center of the conference table. The weight of it seemed to compress the air in the room, and Diana noticed Marcus's hands tighten involuntarily around his presentation remote. Before we continue, Morrison said, his voice carrying the measured authority of someone who had conducted hundreds of due diligence investigations, I want to share what our research team discovered when they dug into quantum dynamics founding documents. He opened the folder and spread out a series of documents that Diana recognized with a mixture of pride and apprehension. The original pitch deck from 2019 lay open, revealing page after page of technical specifications written in her precise handwriting. Her signature appeared at the bottom of each page, along with detailed mathematical proofs that formed the theoretical foundation of their entire platform. This is the original business plan submitted to our firm 3 years ago, Morrison continued. Notice anything unusual, Mr. Caldwell? Marcus leaned forward, his face draining of color as he stared at documents he clearly hadn't seen in years. Those are preliminary drafts, he said, though his voice lacked conviction. The final versions incorporated significant strategic revisions. Katerina pulled out her own tablet and turned it toward the group. I have digital copies of these same documents, she said. According to the metadata, they were created on Dr. Caldwell's personal computer and never subsequently modified. Diana watched the revelation unfold with the strange detachment of someone watching their own vindication in slow motion. She had spent countless hours perfecting those specifications, drawing on her doctoral research to create algorithms that would revolutionize natural language processing. Marcus had contributed marketing projections and competitive analysis, but every technical innovation had originated from her mind. Dr. Foster adjusted her reading glasses and picked up one of the documents. This mathematical framework for transformer optimization, she said, tracing the equations with her finger. This is graduate-level research. Mr. Caldwell, can you walk us through the derivation of these complexity bounds? The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus opened and closed his mouth several times before managing a response that fooled absolutely no one. The technical team handled the implementation details, he said. My focus has always been on the strategic applications and market opportunities. Robert Chun had been quietly reviewing additional documents during the exchange. His expression grew increasingly grave as he absorbed the implications of what he was reading. According to these email threads from 2019, he said, Dr. Caldwell was the primary point of contact for our initial technical evaluation. Diana remembered those emails clearly. She had spent weeks answering detailed questions from Chin's technical advisors, explaining the nuances of her approach to attention mechanisms and providing mathematical proofs for the performance claims in their business plan. Marcus had handled the financial projections and market analysis, but every technical question had been directed to her. Morrison turned to a new section of his folder and retrieved what appeared to be a collection of academic references. Our team also reviewed the citations in your original research, he said. Dr. Caldwell, these papers you referenced from your time at MIT and Google DeepMind. They form the theoretical basis for everything quantum dynamics has accomplished. Those years at Google had been transformative for Diana. Working alongside some of the world's leading AI researchers, she had developed insights into neural network architectures that few people fully understood. When she left to start quantum dynamics with Marcus, she had brought that knowledge with her, along with a network of academic and industry connections that had proven invaluable during their early fundraising. Katerina scrolled through her tablet to a new document. Speaking of those connections, she said, our background research revealed something interesting about your initial funding sources. Dr. Caldwell, did you secure the seed investment through your professional relationships? Diana felt the moment crystallizing around her like a photograph developing in slow motion. The seed funding had come through her former advisor at MIT, who had introduced them to a network of angel investors specifically interested in supporting her research. Marcus had assumed credit for those relationships over time, but the original introductions had been based entirely on her reputation in the academic community. I helped with some of the initial introductions, Diana said carefully, aware that every word was being weighed and measured by some of Silicon Valley's most sophisticated investors. Some of the introductions, Morrison repeated, consulting his notes. According to Professor Elizabeth Warren at MIT, different Elizabeth Warren, she emphasized that our research team contacted her specifically about your potential. She said you were the most promising doctoral candidate she had supervised in 15 years. The praise felt surreal after 2 years of being marginalized as the supportive spouse who didn't understand the serious business of technology development. Professor Warren had been Diana's mentor and champion, helping her navigate the competitive world of academic AI research before she made the decision to enter the startup ecosystem. Marcus attempted to regain control of the narrative one final time. Listen, he said, standing and beginning to pace behind his chair. Diana has been incredibly supportive, and I appreciate everything she's contributed. But building a successful company requires more than just technical expertise. It requires leadership, vision, the ability to make difficult strategic decisions. Robert Chin looked up from the documents he had been reviewing, his expression suggesting he had heard enough evasions for one morning. Mr. Caldwell, he said formally, are you aware that Dr. Caldwell holds 8 patents related to machine learning optimization, 3 of which were filed before quantum dynamics was incorporated? Diana felt a surge of satisfaction as the board members absorbed this information. Those patents represented years of research, innovations she had developed independently that had become the cornerstone of their technology platform. Marcus had never understood the technical details well enough to contribute meaningfully to the patent applications. Dr. Foster pulled up what appeared to be a technical specification document on her own device. I've been reviewing the system architecture documentation, she said. The complexity and sophistication suggest someone with extensive experience in neural network design. Mr. Caldwell, have you personally reviewed the codebase that implements these algorithms? The question hung in the air like an accusation, because everyone in the room understood the implication. Marcus had never personally reviewed the code because he lacked the technical expertise to understand it. Diana had written the core algorithms, supervised their implementation, and maintained the documentation that made the entire system function. Morrison opened to the final section of his folder and spread out a series of email exchanges that made Marcus visibly flinch. These communications between Dr. Caldwell and your engineering team, he said, they read more like technical leadership than supportive assistance. Those emails revealed the truth that Marcus had been desperate to hide. Diana had been making every major architectural decision, resolving technical disputes, and providing the innovation that drove their product development. She had been the chief technology officer in everything but title, while Marcus focused on investor relations and business development. Katerina leaned back in her chair, her expression suggesting she had reached a conclusion that would reshape everything about their investment discussions. "Dr. Caldwell," she said directly, "what is your current official role at Quantum Dynamics?" The question was simple but loaded with implications that everyone understood. Diana had been listed as a co-founder on the original incorporation documents, but Marcus had systematically minimized her role in subsequent investor communications. The discrepancy between her documented contributions and her official recognition had become impossible to ignore. "I'm listed as a technical co-founder," Diana said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. "Though my day-to-day responsibilities have evolved over time." Morrison closed his folder with the finality of someone who had gathered all the evidence he needed. "Based on this documentation," he said, "it appears that Dr. Caldwell has been the primary technical architect of quantum dynamics since its inception." The words settled over the conference room like a verdict, reshaping everyone's understanding of what they had thought they knew about the company's leadership structure. Marcus had built his reputation on innovations he had never created, taking credit for breakthroughs that had emerged from Diana's expertise and research. Robert Chun turned his attention fully to Diana for the first time since the meeting began. "Dr. Caldwell," he said, "can you explain your vision for the technical roadmap going forward?" Diana felt the power dynamics in the room shift completely as 5 of Silicon Valley's most influential investors waited for her response. After 2 years of being treated as the supportive spouse who arranged catering and took notes, she was finally being recognized as the technical leader she had always been. "The roadmap focuses on 3 primary innovations," she began, her voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who actually understood the technology they were discussing. "Enhanced context window processing, multimodal integration capabilities, and real-time learning adaptation." As she spoke, Diana noticed the board members taking detailed notes, their attention focused entirely on her technical explanations while Marcus sat in stunned silence at the head of the table. The revelation was complete, and there would be no returning to the fiction that had defined their professional relationship for the past 2 years. The silence in the conference room stretched for nearly 30 seconds as the board members absorbed the full implications of what they had discovered. Morrison was the first to speak, his voice carrying the weight of a decision that would reshape quantum dynamics' entire future. "Given the evidence we've reviewed today," he said, "I believe we need to address the fundamental question of company leadership before proceeding with any investment discussions." Marcus attempted one final desperate gambit, his voice taking on the pleading tone of someone whose entire world was collapsing. "Look," he said, standing and moving toward the whiteboard as if giving another presentation could somehow restore his credibility. "Diana has been incredibly valuable to the team, but running a $50 million company requires proven business leadership." Katerina's expression suggested she had heard enough excuses for one lifetime. "Mr. Caldwell," she said, her Russian accent making each word sound like a judgment, "you have systematically misrepresented the intellectual property ownership and technical leadership of this company to multiple investors over a 2-year period." The accusation hung in the air like a guillotine blade, sharp and final. Diana watched Marcus's face cycle through disbelief, anger, and finally a kind of resigned panic as he realized that his carefully constructed narrative had completely unraveled. Robert Chin opened his tablet and began scrolling through what appeared to be legal documents. "According to the original incorporation papers," he said, "Dr. Caldwell holds 49% equity in quantum dynamics. However, the intellectual property assignments suggest she should hold significantly more based on her actual contributions." Diana felt a surge of vindication mixed with something approaching pity for Marcus. She had agreed to the 49% equity split during their initial incorporation discussions, trusting that their partnership would be built on mutual respect and shared recognition. That trust now seemed painfully naive. Dr. Foster removed her reading glasses and addressed Diana directly. "Dr. Caldwell," she said, "do you feel prepared to assume formal leadership responsibilities for the technical direction of this company?" The question was straightforward, but its implications were profound. Diana had been making those technical leadership decisions for 2 years while Marcus took credit during board meetings and investor presentations. The difference would be that her contributions would finally be acknowledged and compensated appropriately. I believe the technical roadmap I've been developing represents our strongest path forward, Diana replied, her voice steady and confident. The algorithms and architectures we've implemented provide significant competitive advantages that we've only begun to explore. Morrison consulted his notes and turned to a clean page. Based on our review of the documentation, he said, I motion that the board remove Marcus Caldwell from his position as Chief Executive Officer and appoint Diana Caldwell as the company's new Chief Executive Officer and Chief Technology Officer. The words fell like hammer blow, each syllable destroying years of Marcus's professional identity. Diana watched her husband's face go completely white as the reality of his situation crystallized. He was being fired from the company he thought he had founded, by investors who now understood that his primary contribution had been taking credit for someone else's innovations. Katerina nodded her agreement immediately. I second the motion, she said. Dr. Caldwell clearly has both the technical expertise and the intellectual property foundation necessary to lead this company forward. Robert Chen raised his hand in support. Given the evidence of misrepresentation, he said, I believe this change in leadership is not only appropriate, but necessary to protect our investment. Dr. Foster's vote made the decision unanimous. The technical leadership transition should be immediate, she said. Dr. Caldwell's vision for the platform development aligns much better with current market opportunities. Marcus made one final attempt to salvage something from the wreckage of his professional reputation. Wait, he said, his voice cracking slightly. I built the business relationships. I secured the partnerships. The company needs experienced leadership to navigate the scaling challenges. Morrison's expression suggested he found those arguments unconvincing. Mr. Caldwell, he said formally, your business development contributions are noted. However, the foundation of this company is the intellectual property created by Dr. Caldwell. The partnerships and relationships you mentioned were built on technology you didn't create and couldn't explain. Diana felt the weight of the moment settling around her like a mantle of responsibility she had been preparing to wear for 2 years. The investors were offering her something that should have been hers from the beginning, recognition as the true founder and leader of quantum dynamics. The motion passed unanimously, and Morrison began outlining the transition timeline. Dr. Caldwell will assume all executive responsibilities immediately, he said. We'll need to restructure the equity distribution to reflect the actual intellectual property contributions and prepare public announcements about the leadership change. Katerina was already composing messages on her tablet, likely informing her partners about the dramatic shift in company leadership. This will actually strengthen our investment thesis, she said. Having the actual technical founder in the CEO position significantly reduces our risk profile. Marcus gathered his presentation materials with the mechanical movements of someone in shock. His carefully prepared slides about market opportunity and competitive positioning seemed pathetic now, a hollow performance built on foundations he had never understood. Dr. Foster turned to Diana with genuine interest in her technical plans. Can you walk us through your immediate priorities for platform development? She asked. The Series C funding will provide significant resources for expansion. Diana felt the power dynamics in the room complete their transformation as the board members listened intently to her technical roadmap. She outlined plans for enhanced natural language processing, improved contextual understanding, and breakthrough applications that would differentiate quantum dynamics from every competitor in the artificial intelligence space. As she spoke, Diana noticed Marcus moving toward the door, his professional humiliation complete. The man who had taken credit for her innovations for 2 years was leaving the company that had never really been his, carrying nothing but the knowledge that his reputation in Silicon Valley's tight-knit community was permanently destroyed. Morrison closed his folder and stood to shake Diana's hand. Dr. Caldwell, he said, welcome to your role as Chief Executive Officer of Quantum Dynamics. I believe this company's best days are ahead of us. The investors filed out of the conference room, already discussing term sheets and expansion strategies with an enthusiasm that had been notably absent when Marcus was presenting. Diana remained behind, looking out at the South Bay landscape through the floor-to-ceiling windows, finally seeing her reflection as the leader she had always been. Her phone buzzed with a message from the mysterious JS contact. Congratulations, CEO Caldwell. Legal documentation complete, and filed with the state. Your company is officially yours. Diana deleted the message and opened her laptop, ready to begin the work of transforming quantum dynamics from Marcus's fiction into her reality. The algorithms she had created in their home office would finally receive the recognition and resources they deserved, powered by investors who understood exactly what they were funding. The board had delivered justice with the efficient precision that venture capitalists brought to every decision, removing the pretender and installing the true innovator in a single unanimous vote that would reshape the future of artificial intelligence development. 6 months later, Diana stood at the same podium where Marcus had once basked in stolen glory, but the Pacific Tech Summit felt like an entirely different universe. The spotlight illuminated her navy blue blazer as she addressed an audience that hung on every word of her presentation about quantum dynamics' revolutionary breakthrough in real-time language processing. Under my leadership, Diana said, her voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who had earned every accolade through genuine innovation. We've achieved a 300% improvement in processing efficiency while maintaining accuracy levels that exceed industry standards by 40%. The applause was immediate and sustained, venture capitalists and tech executives recognizing the rare combination of technical brilliance and business acumen that had transformed quantum dynamics from a promising startup into Silicon Valley's most talked about artificial intelligence company. In the front row, Katerina Volkov and James Morrison beamed with the satisfaction of investors whose faith in Diana's leadership had been rewarded beyond their most optimistic projections. The Series C funding had closed at $75 million, significantly higher than originally planned, driven entirely by confidence in Diana's technical vision and proven execution capabilities. The question and answer session revealed the dramatic shift in how the tech community now viewed quantum dynamics. Dr. Elena Rodriguez from Tesla asked about potential applications in autonomous vehicle processing, while Bradley Chen from Andreessen Horowitz inquired about licensing opportunities for their breakthrough algorithms. Diana fielded every technical question with the effortless competence that had always been her hallmark, explaining complex mathematical concepts in language that both engineers and business leaders could understand. The contrast with Marcus's previous presentations was stark and undeniable. During the networking reception, Diana found herself surrounded by a very different crowd than had gathered around Marcus 6 months earlier. These were serious technologists and industry leaders who respected innovation over showmanship, substance over presentation skills. Dr. Sarah Kim, her former MIT advisor, approached with genuine pride radiating from her expression. Diana, she said, this is exactly what I hoped you would accomplish when you left academia. You've proven that technical excellence and business leadership aren't mutually exclusive. The evening's most meaningful moment came when 3 other tech wives approached Diana near the bar. Jessica Chun, the wife of a prominent venture capitalist, spoke for the group with obvious emotion in her voice. Your story has inspired so many of us, she said quietly. Seeing you reclaim credit for your work, it's given us courage to speak up about our own contributions that have been overlooked or minimized. Diana learned that Jessica held a PhD in bioengineering and had been quietly developing the algorithms that powered her husband's successful medical device startup. Standing beside her was Rachel Morrison, whose background in quantum computing had provided the theoretical foundation for her spouse's much-celebrated breakthrough in cryptography. The third woman, Dr. Amanda Foster, had been watching Diana's transformation with particular interest. As a Stanford professor who served on multiple tech company boards, she had witnessed countless examples of brilliant women being marginalized while their male partners received recognition and financial rewards. Meanwhile, across the city in a cramped co-working space in downtown San Jose, Marcus hunched over a rented desk trying to salvage what remained of his professional reputation. The startup he had attempted to launch after leaving Quantum Dynamics had failed to secure even seed funding, as investors throughout Silicon Valley had quickly learned the truth about his lack of technical expertise. His LinkedIn messages went unanswered, his networking attempts met with polite but firm rejections from people who had once considered him a rising star in the tech world. The industry that had once celebrated his vision now understood that he had never possessed the innovations that made him notable. The professional isolation was devastating, But the personal cost had been even higher. Diana had filed for divorce 3 weeks after the board meeting, citing irreconcilable differences that everyone understood stemmed from years of stolen credit and systematic diminishment of her contributions. Back at the Pacific Tech Summit, Diana was completing interviews with technology journalists who wanted to understand how quantum dynamics had achieved such remarkable progress in such a short time. Her explanations focused on the technical innovations rather than the dramatic leadership transition, though astute reporters understood the implications. As the evening wound down, Diana received a message that made her smile with genuine satisfaction. The MIT Technology Review had selected her for their annual list of innovators under 40, recognition that would have been impossible while Marcus was taking credit for her work. Victor Rosenberg, the legendary founder whose praise had once validated Marcus's stolen reputation, sought Diana out as the reception concluded. 6 months ago, he said with evident admiration, "I thought I was investing in promising technology led by an impressive founder. I had no idea I was actually meeting one of the most brilliant minds in artificial intelligence." The ride back to her new Palo Alto office gave Diana time to reflect on the complete transformation of her professional and personal life. Quantum Dynamics now employed 47 engineers, all of whom reported directly to her and understood exactly who had created the innovations that powered their platform. Her phone displayed dozens of messages from potential collaborators, speaking engagement requests, and interview opportunities from publications that recognized her as the technical visionary she had always been. The contrast with 6 months earlier, when she had been invisible at tech events while Marcus held court, seemed almost surreal. The final validation came in the form of a Harvard Business School case study that would examine quantum dynamics leadership transition and rapid growth under Diana's direction. The academic analysis would ensure that future generations of business students understood the importance of recognizing and rewarding actual innovation rather than presentation skills. As Diana reviewed the technical roadmap for the coming year, she smiled at the irony that Marcus's greatest contribution to quantum dynamics had been getting himself fired by the board. His systematic diminishment of her role had ultimately forced the truth into the open, leading to recognition that might have taken years to achieve through normal professional development. Have you ever experienced a situation where your contributions were overlooked or undervalued? She wondered as she composed a social media post about the evening's success. What did that experience teach you about the importance of advocating for your own accomplishments and ensuring that credit goes where it truly belongs? The post would reach thousands of aspiring technologists and entrepreneurs, many of whom were struggling with similar challenges in their own professional relationships and career development. Diana closed her laptop and looked out at the Silicon Valley skyline, now seeing it as the landscape where her authentic achievements would continue to flourish rather than the place where she had been forced to hide her brilliance behind someone else's ambition. The transformation was complete, and the future belonged entirely to her.